Let's get going. All right, hi everyone. My name is Frank DiCarlo and welcome to New Jersey Dam's live panel discussion, bridging the gap between business and IT. I've been looking forward to this one. I've been fortunate over the years, having had the opportunity to oversee many digital asset management initiatives. And traditionally, they start with either side, creative slash business or IT, presenting strategies to support DAM in their organization or business. In cases, DAM could be new to the organization or replacing an existing, but what is certain is the natural tension between who is funding it and who is spending it. Today, we have digital asset management leaders who have been on both sides of the fence to discuss the challenges and solutions involved with business and IT, and when they embark on the common cycle of any RFP, implementation, operations, and change management process for a digital asset management initiative. Now, I do want to warn you that our prep sessions got awful heated on this subject matter, but everybody promised to keep it fair today, right, panelists? We have your word?
Yeah.
We'll try.
Putting aside,
Yeah.
let's introduce them. We're fortunate to have them here. Would everybody please just give a brief introduction? Maybe start with Jason.
Of course. Good morning, everybody. Jason Carter here, Senior Manager of Marketing Systems at Tailored Brands, the holding company for Men's Warehouse, Jose Bank, Joseph Abood, K&G Fashion Superstores, etc. My team is comprised of product, program, compliance, and content, which includes the digital asset management space. I've been working in the space for roughly 5 years. Prior to that, I was working in actual content production and marketing strategies.
Thank you, Jason. Roxana?
Sure. My name is Roxana Durr. My background is in software engineering, and at this point, I'm managing technical projects. So what's my connection to the DAM industry? I work for Wakefront Food Corporation, which is a ShopRite, Price Right co-op, and I was responsible for running the RFP process to find an enterprise DAM platform. Once we selected our vendor, I assembled the Wakefront DAM Governance Council to design and implement the system together with all our stakeholders. And now I manage technical support and customization of the platform. And I work closely with our digital assets and standards team who manage the content.
Excellent, thank you. John?
John Florence, I'm the DAM practice manager at Rise Time. Been in the DAM space for about 14 years, both on the client side and now on the provider side. So at Rise Time, we host enterprise DAMs in the cloud. We have about 7 major companies, all pretty well-known brand names. And I make sure that they are able to conduct their day-to-day operations using the software they've chosen. And we try to take all the geek stuff out of it. So I've worked both on the client side. I come from the print industry originally, long time ago. And but I've spent about 10 years in IT also, so I feel like I can talk both sides of this.
Terrific, thank you. And last but not least, Ralph?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. I'm Ralph Windsor. I'm Project Director of Daydream with DAM Consultants. I'm also editor of DAM News and director of the DAM Guru program. I've been doing this about 25 years. I've been a DAM software developer, project manager, more recently a consultant for the last 10, 15 years or so. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to getting going with this discussion. I think it should be a lot of fun.
Excellent. Thank you all for being here. It's great to have you. So let's get into it. First question we have for the panel today. What are some of the tensions you've experienced between the business and IT, and specifically as they apply to digital asset management? Who would like to start?
I'll kick off, as I'm usually the opinionated one. I think I've probably seen I've seen this from both sides of the coin, from the IT side and the business side. Just to give kind of 3 examples of each. On the IT side, of seeing IT departments sort of insist on using very convoluted purchasing procedures, which kind of tends to lead users to suspect that they're being done deliberately to stop the project, the DAM project progressing. This sort of department for not getting things done kind of effect. The other issue I've seen with on the IT side is IT departments implementing something without actually consulting the users. They're just sort of dumping a system on them or saying, why don't you go and use Dropbox, something like that. On the third one, I would say is IT people believing that DAM's all about storage. One thing I've noticed, especially with IT people, is they seem to discount metadata, the whole thing about taxonomies and control vocabularies and all that sort of things. They don't tend to regard it as being as important as it should be regarded. So that's the kind of negatives on the IT side. You get the same side, or the same sort of things from a kind of inverse perspective on the DAM side. So some of the things issues I've seen with DAM people is they wanting to go shopping immediately and start looking at demos of systems rather than actually working out what they want the thing to do. The other side is DAM people, or certainly what you might call prospective DAM users, not having a good understanding of things like security, data protection, and all that side of things, and then tending to discount that. You tend to get this less, but you used to get it in the past, is some users having completely unrealistic expectations about what the DAM will do and expecting it to kind of do everything, and numerous requirements all being grouped together and dumped into the same project. So yeah, I've seen sins on both sides of the line, so to speak, there. Yeah, in terms of the things that can cause tensions.
I can go. I think, one of the key things that I've seen is, people get measured different ways. IT tends to be project, schedule, budget focused, and the business tends to be more, revenue, shareholder value driven. So many times, I see the business, and particularly marketers, their favorite DAM is the first one that comes along and potentially solves their problems, where the IT group tends to take a longer view of it with maybe the goal of getting that implementation, the selection and the implementation, to fit into some predefined framework that a PMO, project management office, has already set forth. And DAM projects are kind of unusual in that the implementation can look almost nothing like the actual operations once they go live. And so, the IT team is at a little disadvantage because they don't know what that's going to look like on the other side. And the business, like Ralph said, the business sometimes has no idea what it takes to actually install and migrate and train everyone for one of these systems.
Right, and what I've seen also is that the users cling on to the familiarity of their current processes. And when you implement this sophisticated new platform, it's very hard for them to let go of their process, of their current process, and disrupt that and move on to the new. And that's where the tensions start to build, because IT really wants them to start using all the functionality they've implemented, that they found through the RFP process. And the users just don't want to let go. And that is detrimental to the ROI as well, because they're not utilizing the efficiencies that could be provided by the new platform.
To add to that, I would definitely say that the two biggest pain points I see are, and it's the flip side of the coin actually, that Roxana and Ralph were kind of mentioning, is the idea that the workflow and operational design should be bent around the technology versus the technology being bent around or structured and around how it supports and the functionality of the operations. So, for example, the suggestion that the business partner needs to completely redesign their workflows. Really, they should design their ideal workflow and then present that, and that should be a part of their RFP process, is that which tools actually answer those needs cleanly. The second piece would be when an organization is new to the asset management or media management space and procures a vendor acting as a third party. Oftentimes there's vendor disagreements with the IT organization about how something should be accomplished from a technological standpoint, and it's hard for the business partner to really get involved and figure out how to support that relationship. And then there's also when an organization is new and they haven't cleanly defined what their requirements are and how they expect the tool to support their organization. What are its baseline ROI, KPI, business case justifications, et cetera. Really going into it with a clear understanding of what you need and why, and what that performance looks like is gonna save you a lot of headache.
Very good. Anybody else want to add to that? Ralph, you had something else?
No, I think we've if anyone had that as a homework question, we've comprehensively answered it there.
Yeah, I agree. So the next question, we put together a table. Put that up now to share. This question is a typical IT project lifecycle effective for delivering DAM projects?
I'll go. I think that, you know, the term I've heard in my many, many years of doing just publishing systems in general, people use the term journey, you know, when they're talking about governance and change management and onboarding technology and users. And in some ways, you know, in trying to communicate this to large groups of people or even potential clients, you know, I've kind of broken it down into, you know, a few different kind of simple stages. And one of the metaphors I use is you basically agree to implement. You tell your implementation partners or the vendor, whoever, how you conduct business today. They construct a kind of a best guess new process using their tool around your current process. And then you go live, and then somewhere between 6 months and 18 months, the light bulb goes off and you go, wow, we didn't need to do it that way at all, because, you know, we were, to the earlier comment about legacy processes, we now see that a lot of things are handled by our software that we don't need people to do, and people can do more important things. I use that term journey in the beginning because I think people mistaken that for like a vacation journey or a ride in the car or something, where I really view it more as kind of like in those Japanese gardens where they have those nice stones in the creek or in the pond, and you have to jump from one to one. Some of those steps are pretty long, and a lot of people get wet along the way. It's not always a smooth journey, and I think I'd like to hear if the others would agree with that, or maybe it's just my implementations.
I don't personally, if I can jump in, I don't personally think the IT project lifecycle is a challenge. Yes, it's very regimented, it's very linear. I think the key to that relationship and marrying the IT project management approach versus the business's needs is really going from more of a test and learn as you go, more of an agile approach. Take your designed workflows and or the pieces of the technology that support such, and walk through them in a regimented fashion, step by step, so that you don't get to the end of your development, your execution of development, and find that it doesn't actually align with what you started out with in the beginning of your project.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I hear this a lot, and I'm new to the DAM space, that DAM is not a project, it's a program, and that we really need to budget for the agile type implementation where we create this platform, but we gather the feedback from the users and have that feedback loop feed the changes that users need, because when they do get it, it's never what they truly expected, or something doesn't work right. These are very complex systems, right? So we have ingestion and we have distribution. These are features that may not have been present in their workflow that they have now, and they're automated and they're sophisticated. So they need to be worked on in the agile type fashion, which I don't think people realize.
Yeah, I think those are all really brilliant points made by everybody else. I'd agree, especially with what Roxana said. I think the main issue I've tended to find is that it's DAM initiatives aren't really projects. They're like, you never really finish them. They're kind of ongoing. You're going to be doing this forever, all the time. You're going to have digital assets. And these sort of life cycle approaches, they're okay to get you off the ground, but it's not a kind of do it and go away kind of job. It's you have a burst of activity. It might die down a little bit, but it's going to come back, and you have to kind of treat it as an ongoing process. And yeah, the sort of agile type of method. I mean, there are issues, I think, with that particular approach, but it's maybe more suitable than sort of waterfall stuff, where you have a kind of set of predefined stages, you run through them, and then you don't worry about it again for another 5 years.
Right.
Anything on top of that, John?
No, I would totally agree. And I think, back to how I think we started the conversation, when you talk about that project versus program, and, to Ralph's point about long-term, what happens 2-3 years from now, it's being able to budget for that change from a project perspective and a program perspective. It's not because the implementers don't get it right. I think one of the missed points is that it has more to do with the business changes, right? The markets change, customers change. We weren't talking e-commerce 15 years ago. We weren't talking social 10 years ago. The way our customers interact with us changes, sometimes in a year or two, so that assumption that a system you implemented in 2015 is still current in 2020 is probably foolish at best. But we have to have that constant update of our supporting platforms, just like we would with email or Office or the Adobe suite. The DAM should be right there in the mix with it.
Yeah, I think this last column we've got on the diagram here, change management, it's only one column, but it kind of almost feels like it should be the same width as the other three, if you were measuring it in terms of importance.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think the role of IT also changes in DAM implementation versus some other software because of this agile type approach. IT has to really get involved in regular demos, getting stakeholders involved, right? Mock-ups, user acceptance testing. You can't just have IT test the new implementation and say, oh, it works. You got to really give it to the users and say, do the user acceptance testing so that we can roll this out. All of these iterations, I think that's new to IT. And it's a little bit different from other software implementation projects.
Very true.
Yeah, I think one other thing I've noticed with IT-led DAM initiatives, it's user engagement and getting people to, the prospective DAM users, to understand you are going to be using this. You're probably going to be using it for quite a while. So you really ought to pay attention to what we're about to deliver for you. And I feel the frustration from the IT side, as well as sometimes from the other side as well. It's hard to get users to actually engage with what's going to be delivered for them for their benefit sometimes.
That's true. I've had that issue.
So does IT help or hinder keeping DAM initiatives focused?
I can jump in here real quick. I would say that it helps when they receive clear guidance with clearly formed requirements. So you've laid out the path for what your needs look like, and they've posed all the necessary vetting and sussing out any additional details to fulfill on such. Harm when that alignment or that instruction is really missing, or when business and IT don't actually agree on what you're chasing and why. And often through that process, IT can have a tendency to want a backseat drive on your efforts, especially when you're trying to determine what's the strategy for the business. They do have a vested interest, but I think you have to set clear guidance on what the guardrails of expectations of the relationship are from the start.
Right.
And
If I,
go ahead, John.
if I could add to that, when I was originally a DAM administrator, I often fell into that trap where, I wanted budget for an upgrade or an enhancement, something like that. And, the infrastructure team, the IT team will look at that and say, you just want, new shiny objects, or these are on your wish list. And I kind of ended up, after a couple of years, falling into a role where instead of being all business focused or all IT focused, I sat in the middle and talked both ways. I actually acted as a translator from the technical side. What new features are coming out? What customizations do I need? Having that discussion with the business, having the business translate that into outcomes for them, and then hand that back to the IT team and saying, this is how it's related to the things that were important to them, which were basically cost and revenue and commitment, schedules, things like that. I find now with some of our larger customers, big CPGs that are really almost totally marketing focused or manufacturing focused, this whole new category of marketing operations, which are essentially primarily IT people who sit in the middle like I used to and spend their time translating business and IT speak both ways. So they're kind of that in-between negotiator, so to speak.
Yep, that's how I feel now. And the other thing I want to mention is for the future initiatives, in order to keep them focused, right? Business has to consider IT's perspective, and IT has to consider creative operations and their needs, but business has to show ROI, right? And gain efficiencies in order to justify future initiatives. So how are they going to measure that? IT can help them with reporting so that they can gain buy-in from the sponsors of future initiatives. And speaking of sponsors, I think that's another very important point. There has to be somebody in the C-suite to kind of keep this program going and champion it to both sides. And I don't know, do you guys feel like the sponsors usually come from the IT side, or is it more from the business?
Yeah, I just to come in there, I think, yeah, it's this question, does IT help or hinder DAM initiatives? It's a 6 of one, half a dozen the other type of question. Is where you've got like a, where you've got both sides are willing to compromise and understand where each other are coming from. You don't tend to find they hinder, they actually help, and their role's a bit like sort of expert consultants. Where you've got a kind of IT department that acts a bit like a kind of internal fiefdom that's independent of the rest of the business with their own agenda, that's when things can get a bit more complicated from what I've seen. So yeah, where you've got reasonable people, you get reasonable results. I think that's the bottom line there.
John is muted.
Sorry, I was muted. One thing I'd add to what Ralph said is, I think the big breakthrough for me in my early implementation when I was on the business side was finding I'd had some IT and, experience, and I'm fairly geeky, as most of my friends and family would say. So I made kind of relationships with people on the networking teams and the application support teams in the database side. And it was really those personal relationships, that trust that we established early, that really made it successful for me. Because, whether it was IT or in finance, it's something that gets missed a lot too. Having those trusted partners who look out for you and help you navigate, the corporate infrastructure and get things approved and look out for you, those are probably worth more than any features or upgrades or even user experience that you ever find, because they help you survive in a corporate environment where there's a lot of other competing priorities going on. And, particularly in the DAM world where it's back office and not necessarily visible, like say your public facing CMS, your website. I found that was really, really important. And even today, in that column that we had in that chart that Frank had up, even in the governance part, we don't really use the word trust, but I think trust is probably the single most important aspect of maintaining longevity in your application. Others?
Anybody else? Yeah. Okay. Got some great questions pouring in. What are some strategies for success to bridge the gap between business and IT, especially in relationship to digital asset management?
I'll come in with a few here. Getting IT involved really early would be my main tip. Is don't sort of present them with this fait accompli that you've found this great system and you're doing it whatever from the downside. Or the business side. Yeah, the sooner they're involved, the less sort of nasty surprises you're going to get. And I think the other side of it is, especially from the DAM user's perspective, is understand that IT people are very process and procedure oriented. And the reason they're that way is because you have to be, because you're dealing with complicated technology and you have to have kind of a plan and a process for delivering it properly. I think if you're a DAM user and you understand that, then you tend to get better results, because again, it's come back to the previous point that we were talking about. You're both understanding each other's perspectives. I think the other one is get a second opinion. I'm not gonna pitch my own business here, but obviously you can ask for consultants and forums, friends, colleagues, all the rest of it. Get some second opinions about what you're being told is other sort of top tip I would say with this one. And the flip side of that is don't take anyone's opinion at face value. Always get lots of opinions from lots of different stakeholders and participants.
If I can jump in, I think one of the key factors here to actually bridge this gap is governance. So pulling everyone together, having representations from across the business with regularly scheduled interval conversations and discussions, both during your actual RFP, your implementation, your operations, throughout the entire life cycle of your program or product, that you're checking in with one another, right? It's also based on, do you have an executive sponsor coming from each of those parts of the business? And then have you established initiative ambassadors? So those that sing your praises, those that speak to your agenda when you're not a part of a conversation, that represent you.
Good. I guess I can jump in as well. I think the main thing that I have to say is that both IT and business should just zoom out and focus on the success of the company. And when you have that common goal, I can give 2 practical suggestions for each side to bridge the gap and ensure the success of this program. I would say for IT, they should really educate themselves in the dams, like I said before, and to keep up with the industry innovations. Also for IT, they should focus on exercising change management practices and not just dump the system on the lap of the users and say, hey, here it is, great featureful system for you, and walk away. They need to introduce a new platform, train, retrain, create governance, and help business translate legacy processes into the new workflow. On the business side, I think business really needs to focus on letting go of legacy processes and be open to change and favor the new platform. Sometimes, you know, there's cosmetic differences. Yes, there's pain in developing new processes, but they're usually balanced out by sophisticated features of new platform, and it can be used to improve efficiencies if you just let it. So you could just consider it as a creative process, and since you're creative people, you know, take care of that, and that will ensure success. And the second thing for business is to view IT as a partner in this program. Once your view of IT changes, plus all that focus on really common goal of success of the company, I think that the relationship will change. And John spoke about, you know, creating these relationships, personal relationships with people and different divisions of the company. That will really change, the relationship will change from this animosity to real partnership.
If I get one quick thing to that, you know, when you want to move forward or you want to solve a problem in either of these two groups, ironically, the primary tool of IT is a ticket. The primary tool of the business, whether it's creative operations or marketing, whatever, is typically a conversation, you know, a meeting, and who doesn't love meetings?
It's true.
But to get either of those two crossing over and using the other, you know, sometimes it just creates more friction than actual problems it solves. So part of that goal of any change management or governance should be ways to recognize those two differences and how these two groups operate, and figure out ways to have common ground, because a lot of business operation challenges are not break fix by their nature, right? They're more strategic in nature. They need to be talked through, and that's typically not something that the IT groups, particularly at the, you know, more operational levels, are used to doing.
Great point.
Very good. Anybody want to add anything to that?
I think maybe one last concept would be when you're coming to the table with your requirements, really be clear on what your minimum viable is, as far as what is the, obviously this isn't a continuous journey, and you don't have to land on the perfect fit in the first attempt. First decide what's most meaningful for the business today, so that your minimum viable product or your actual instance is answering that need. And then everything after that is more cyclical. It's your test and learn approach. It's your continued change management as your maturity model advances.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Like I said, we got some great questions here. Anybody who wants to continue to type some in. Why don't we start with this one? What are some of the key features you look for when evaluating which DAM platform to purchase for your business? That's a loaded question.
That's a huge, wide area, I would say, there in terms of features. One thing I will put in, I'll just enter this into the chat. I don't know how many people have seen this. We put together an open specification of a DAM system, which probably doesn't cover everything. I'll see if I can just put that in. Yeah, there's a big list of features there. some of them you're going to need, some of them you're not. I would say you probably don't want to start with features. You want to start with requirements. And to Oksana's point a bit earlier on, it's kind of think about, zoom out and think about what does the business need to do as an objective, rather than necessarily what features you would require. I think that's how I would answer that.
And Ralph, and I'd actually pose a question for you. So a lot of clients will oftentimes have the, either coming from a place of naivety or inexperience or lack of exposure, and product features and functionality often inspire the business case, often inspire the workflow. How would you blend in that objective or that gap to what you're suggesting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I may have to apply a fee here, Jason. No, I think, again, it comes back to what are we trying to do? And this idea that you've come up with, having seen this other system and the features that it's got, what business objectives are those contributing to? And let's start with that as a first and foremost point. And yeah, you are correct that you kind of change the world by looking at it. As a result of seeing certain features, they prompt ideas. But it still has to come down to what are we trying to do and what are the top objectives? And to your point on the last question, what's the kind of minimum viable product? And what do we absolutely need to get off the ground here? I think I would go with those. So yeah, objectives, and also trying to get something that will work and will deliver some value as quickly as possible. The key areas.
I'll jump in here too, Jason, to your question about requirements versus features. What we did was combine, during the RFP process, we wrote a very long list, probably hundreds, of all possible features of the dam, plus whatever our requirements were. And we evaluated, we had our potential vendors grade each feature as to whether they have it or not, or it could be implemented, customized to have it. But then once we got their responses, we weighed each feature, whether it was important to us, whether it was a requirement or not. So if it wasn't so important, it wasn't such a big deal if the dam provider didn't have it available or wasn't on their roadmap, if that makes sense. So it was a combination of both.
I also think it's helpful, if you are coming from that perspective, to work with your vendor, work with IT to suss out what's in the industry, what products exist, what they support on a line-by-line, feature-by-feature capabilities matrix. That might also inspire kind of your defined workflows, your defined requirements, especially if this is the first attempt.
Excellent. I like this one too. Please address the gap that exists between the business user, who might be an advocate for system change, IT, who will be responsible, and the C-suite, who have a difficult time justifying efficiencies when considering a six-figure dam initiative.
I want that. So, you know, we've used the term governance and change management and sponsors, stakeholders, you know, the terms we throw around a lot. One of the terms that I learned long ago that I really like, and it really came out of the implementation side, but communities of practice. And, you know, where that's different from, say, standard governance or stakeholder, you know, boards. The communities of practice are, if done correctly, are really the people who depend on the software, use it, you know, it's what gets them through the day, and have a passion for it. You know, they're the ones who come to you with suggestions or questions, things like that. I have found if you can early on develop and maintain that community of practice, those really engaged users who should, by definition, come from the business side, they're usually your best advocates for communicating to the C-suite, which helps, you know, initiatives start with them, go through, say their executive sponsor and then get back to IT. It's much stronger when you ask for something and IT's already heard about it because it's made that, that alternative route to them. I think where I see these projects failing over the long term, the most is where like it's an IT or a C-suite, CMO, somebody drives these initiatives and the users get on board because they want to, their jobs are changing, they want a job and they want to maintain it. But that lack of investment in the solution, if they're not actively involved in its care and feeding over time, it's like entropy takes over and slowly but surely, they become less and less relevant.
Got it. Can you speak to the challenges of working with IT to integrate the dam with existing enterprise systems, especially when some of those existing systems are terrible? Well worded.
Never seen that.
I think a part of your RFP and or implementation obviously includes your integration strategy. So if you're following the entire work from start to finish, and you're following your data flows, so understanding what systems are facilitating the work before the asset management platform and what work is being facilitated after the asset management platform, that will help you kind of clearly define the technology that exists in your periphery. From that, you can kind of define what your integration capabilities and possibilities are. And someone that a prior question about one of the key features, obviously, integration capabilities are a key factor, especially if you're trying to establish not a silo, but more of an integration strategy. It's definitely something you really need to be bringing into consideration.
I think just on this one, the thing that constantly surprises me when integrating with if I've understood the question properly, it's kind of like in-house or internal IT systems. It's just how low tech you have to go, and how you're back into these sort of things that people were dealing with 20 or even 30 years ago. And yeah, if you're a DAM user, really having to manage your expectations about how demanding and, as I said, quite what belt and braces kind of techniques you're going to have to get involved with. Managing your expectations or telling people they can't have what they want, to put it another way.
Yeah, we see this quite a bit, particularly not to pick on any industry, but like ERP systems and PIM systems. There's some really good ones, and there are some ones that I could swear look just like an Excel spreadsheet. And when people want to integrate with that, they say integrate, but what they're really saying is, I don't have a system there that it needs to be that system of record. Can the DAM substitute for that? It's a difficult conversation because the DAM can do a lot, but it can't do everything, right? But so you kind of have to be able to have those painful strategic conversations, hopefully way before contracts are signed, so that those expectations are level set across the board.
Agreed.
Yeah, if I could throw out one other thing, and this has not happened to me, but I have seen it with other people, is there's been a lot of consolidation in our industry. Web CMSs buying DAMs and DAMs buying CMSs, and that big mothership out of California buying everything and anything they can get hold of. And sometimes when you want to do an integration, right, two vendors may not work together very well. One vendor may say, I have my own DAM solution, so I'm not going to help you integrate with this one you picked. You should have picked ours. And I don't think it gets talked about very often, at least not in public. But you do need to make sure, not that necessarily that there's a existing integration going, if that's part of your plan, but at least have the conversation with both groups and make sure there's a willingness. and capability there. Because you need to look at APIs too. And even though on the business side that's pretty geeky, if there's not an existing set of APIs, then you're going to have to pay to have that written. And those, those can be reasonable projects sometimes, but sometimes, you have to invent the wheel, and it can kill your project.
Yeah, there are a few vendors who won't even write it for money either. I have encountered, and yeah, that's going to presuppose you've got to get somebody to build this workaround for you who is not the vendor and may not either be your IT department.
Yeah, and it's not, and to Ralph's point, it's not necessarily something that the IT group would be looking for, because, if they don't come from this industry, it's maybe not something they're used to seeing.
It also might be an uncomfortable topic too, right? So if you're revealing skeletons in the closet for an organization that maybe hasn't pressed the envelope on advancing internal systems, then all of a sudden you're kind of pulling back the curtain and revealing some of those weaknesses. I think as long as you're willing to have honest conversations with yourselves across business and IT, you can establish upfront what those barriers are going to be.
Yeah, I agree with Jason that when you pull back the curtain and you do integrate DAM with a terrible system, on a positive note, what you can do is use that data from the DAM, because it's more precise than just kind of talking about how terrible the system is, right? Because now you have an integration in place and you can use reporting and data to show the terribleness of it. So that's what you can bring to your executives and show them the proof and the necessity to upgrade those systems.
My experience with that piece is usually those systems are the backbone of your organization, and they may have attempted to upgrade, but due to the scale and number of functions being supported, it may not be cost effective or feasible. So you may have to find stopgap ways to create data flows. Sometimes you can position applications in between your asset management platform and those systems like your PIMs that act as interpretation. So talking down to legacy systems, pushing up to more current day products.
That's a great idea. I think improvement could also be considered, not just full upgrade or replacement.
Yeah. One last point. I was on a conversation Friday with a totally unrelated vendor that we're planning on doing integration for one of our customers. Never talked to these people before, never run across their platform. And the conversation was going really well. They apparently have a very nice DAM talent management platform. And then we got the person on their side said, now we've talked about almost everything. Do we want to talk about brand and product lookup tables? And you could hear everyone just sort of slump in their chair. And I said, this conversation just went sideways, didn't it? And everyone laughed, because everyone on the phone had been through the same pain in some previous implementation around those things. And I think to the earlier point, get it out on the table and talk about it. And you don't have to have a perfect solution, right? Some of these things have been wrong longer than we've all been alive. And it's not necessarily a crime that we don't have, the bullet point that says this is how we fix that. Because it's, it's more about the ecosystem for the business versus just, what your product can and can't do.
That's right. Ever changing, ever maturing, adapting. This question, the person that asked it, if you'd like to talk to the panel directly, let me know through chat and we'll bring you on board, because I think there might be a little back and forth with the way it was posed. He has a situation here where the system was purchased and rolled out, and now IT is completely hands off, even though IT was involved initially in this SaaS system that they initiative. So he's wondering, how do we get them back involved and at what level?
I think from my perspective, that this one's, at least in a larger organization, is pretty clear. It's your executive sponsor. who put together the requirement and sponsored the requirement in the first place should help to re-engage. Now, how far you push up into that tree, whether it's your director, your an VP, or someone at the C-suite level, really depends on your organization and how tenuous you believe the relationship is. But it also could be you bridging the gap yourself, right? There's nothing wrong with you reaching across the aisle to say, hey, we're looking for re-engagement, and here are the reasons. And obviously, this was not a deliver and done. This is an ongoing relationship and an ongoing iterative product. What do I need to do on my end to re-engage you? And you might have to come with some justifications, right? So think through what you're missing, what you've lost, what you're looking to accomplish.
Yeah, and service level agreements. I mean, you know, I was hesitant to answer this because this is what I do, not from a SaaS perspective, but I have customers who we are kind of like hybrid SaaS. If you go into a SaaS implementation where you're in a shared environment, which means you have limitations on services and configurations, you need to know up front what's in bounds and what's not, because a lot of companies have kind of this all one size fits all strategy, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that unless you think you're going to get them to make changes to a system that everyone's got to use. So that, you know, SaaS is kind of a broad category for software as a service, but there's a lot of operational implementations. I think you got to know what you got to level set your expectations with that vendor prior to going in. I get a lot of customers and customer referrals from people who went SaaS first and realized that they need to do a lot of integrations and customizations, and SaaS just doesn't support that sometimes.
Just look at it, I think, yeah, this is Alan's question. Great question, Alan, as ever. Just to try and clarify the situation there, you've got IT was involved in the system purchases and rollout. Now they're completely hands-off in this SaaS system. So I'm guessing if it's a SaaS system, it means that it's independent of IT. It is managed and hosted by the vendor. And now your IT department or the IT department is saying, right, well, we've helped you out with this, over to you. We don't want anything more to do with it, or at least it's your problem. I'm guessing that's to what Frank was talking about earlier in terms of the interaction with this. I'm guessing that's what you were thinking of. I think in terms of how do you get them involved, it's why do you need to get them involved? What are you looking for them to specifically to help you with this particular vendor? Is it the fact they're not delivering what they said they were going to? Is it you need extensions added and things like that, and now you're not getting them? You've got to define the issues and then think about IT's role in this and what was their role originally, and what is their role now. So yeah, you'd probably have to clarify all those points a bit more first. It'd be difficult to give you a kind of glib, do this and X, Y, or Z will happen to get them involved again.
Okay. We've got a couple more minutes. We touched upon some of this, but anybody else want to touch upon how person's asking, how do you approach rolling user feedback into IT requirements?
I think with this, you start with the user feedback first, and then you've got to look at the IT requirements as layered over the top, and then address each of those individual conflicts. So someone's saying, right, well, we want a system that's going to allow us to manage 20 terabyte videos, but we don't have the IT requirements. We just don't have the storage space. Well, it's then why do you need to manage 20 terabyte videos and things like that? But you have to actually start from the user perspective. It all has to be user centered, I think.
I would add, you know, I mean, most of my clients have been live for years. It's always curious to me why we don't spend a lot of time maintaining user stories and use cases from the beginning, because it's really, when you think about it from an IT perspective, they really want they want to start from there and get the requirements out of that, and then go back to those and change them as things change. That's so much more logical than, treating it as something totally new out of the blue. But I totally understand how hard it is to maintain those user stories culturally within any given company. That may or may not be part of that internal company culture. If it is, it's a great thing. If it isn't, I think it does get challenging.
I think to your point there, John, the DAM requirements tend as well they're quite similar, but not exactly the same each time. You get these tiny little variations. And those, what seems to be tiny, turns out to be quite a lot bigger as you go deeper into it, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah, we're special.
Yeah. Everyone's special in DAM, John.
Yeah.
I think the situation can also be rendered less challenging when you have, say, a program or product manager attached to fielding all of these change requirements. So like you're saying, if you're managing your user stories tightly and checking in with user engagement, they should be someone, if not a formalized role, so, even if it's the asset manager themselves, should be documenting. And then from the governance perspective, the governance should be reviewing, okay, can these change requirements be categorized? And then once you've kind of grouped all of those requirements, can you prioritize against what the business requirements were? What's the justifications? That then can be presented as the business case for change.
Right.
Well, that was a quick hour. They always are. I want to thank everybody for being here, especially our panelists. Thank you, panelists. You did an incredible job. Not surprising with the caliber of who you are. And I want to thank the audience. We hope you found today's topic informative. So you can find other New Jersey DAM panel discussions on YouTube. You can also keep up to date with everything happening for digital asset management enthusiasts via our New Jersey DAM LinkedIn group. Speaking of upcoming happenings, on Friday, the 17th of April, we'll be doing another live panel discussion on metadata titled The Evolution of Metadata. What has changed and what needs to happen? There'll be another terrific panel for that that'll be joining us. I look forward to discussing that ever-changing, evolving, and essential component of digital asset management in a few weeks. But until then, I want to thank you all again for being here. Have a great day, and we'll see you again soon. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.